My name is Leo, and I hate flying, especially at night. The world outside the window just disappears into a big black nothing. Tonight was different though. I was flying alone for the first time, heading to visit my grandparents. The plane, Flight 747, rumbled as it climbed higher and higher into the inky sky. I pressed my face against the cold glass, trying to see anything at all. Below, the city lights looked like a handful of scattered glitter. Then they were gone, swallowed by the darkness. The seatbelt sign pinged off, and a few people started to move around the cabin. It felt so normal, so boring. I almost wished for something exciting to happen. I would soon regret that wish. A lot. That's when I first saw them. The clouds. They weren't the fluffy white cotton balls you see in cartoons. These were weird. They glowed with a sickly greenish-yellow light, like old fluorescent bulbs about to burn out. They swirled in strange, unnatural patterns, twisting and turning as if something was stirring them from below. I squinted, trying to make sense of the sight. Maybe it was just a weird storm or some kind of pollution I'd never seen before. I glanced around the cabin. A woman across the aisle was knitting. A businessman was tapping away on his laptop. No one else seemed to notice the creepy, glowing fog that was gathering all around our plane. It felt like we were flying into a giant bowl of spoiled soup. I nudged the woman sitting next to me, a lady with big glasses reading a thick book. "Do you see that?" I asked, my voice a little shaky. I pointed a trembling finger out the window. She peered over her glasses, first at me and then outside. She squinted. That is odd," she murmured, her brow furrowed in thought. "Looks like St. Elmo's fire, maybe? A strange weather phenomenon." But her voice didn't sound so sure. The glowing haze pulsed, and for a second, I thought I saw a shape within it. A long, snaking tentacle of vapor that reached out toward our wing before dissolving back into the swirling mess. I gulped. That was definitely not a weather phenomenon. A chill ran down my spine, a cold that had nothing to do with the airplane's air conditioning. The green-yellow clouds were getting closer now, pressing in on all sides of the plane. It was like we were the last little bubble of safety in a vast, spooky ocean. The engines of the plane droned on, a steady hum that was usually comforting. But now it sounded like a nervous hum, like the plane itself was scared of what was waiting for us out there in the dark. I pulled my hoodie tighter around me, trying to ignore the gnawing feeling in my stomach. The feeling that we weren't just flying through a storm. We were flying into a trap. The normal hum of the plane began to change. It started with a low groan, a metallic ache that seemed to come from the very bones of the aircraft. Then, a loud bang echoed from the outside, making everyone jump. The lights in the cabin flickered once, twice, then steadied. A flight attendant's calm voice came over the intercom, telling us we were just experiencing some minor turbulence. But I knew better. I looked out the window again. The clouds weren't just clouds anymore. They were taking shape. I saw what looked like giant gaping mouths filled with sharp, misty teeth. Long, shadowy arms with wispy claws reached for the plane, scraping against the metal with a sound like fingernails on a chalkboard. Panic started to bubble up in the cabin. People were gasping, pointing out their own windows at the monstrous shapes forming in the sky. A little boy started to cry, and his mom tried to soothe him, her own face pale with fear. The plane shuddered again, more violently this time. I felt a strange cold draft sweep through the aisle, even though all the vents were closed. It smelled like rain and something else. Something rotten. I saw a shadow flicker in the corner of my eye. A dark shape that darted down the aisle faster than any person could move. When I blinked, it was gone. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. This wasn't turbulence. The monster outside was trying to get in. Then, things got even weirder. The walls of the plane seemed to breathe. I watched, horrified, as the plastic panel next to my window rippled, bulging outward and then sucking back in, like a giant lung. A low growl rumbled through the floor, vibrating up through the soles of my shoes. It wasn't the engine. This sound was deeper, more guttural. It sounded alive. The overhead compartments rattled, not from the shaking, but as if something was inside them, trying to get out. The air grew heavy and thick, and the soft cabin lights began to flicker again, casting long dancing shadows that looked like grasping fingers. The plane wasn't just a machine anymore. It felt like it was becoming part of the monster. I wasn't the only one who felt it. The businessman, who had been typing on his laptop, was now staring at his screen in horror. The text had been replaced by a single glowing green eye. The woman who had been knitting dropped her needles as her ball of yarn unraveled and slithered under the seat like a snake. We were no longer on a normal flight. We were inside a creature, a giant metal beast that was either being possessed or eaten alive by the infected sky. And we were all trapped in its belly. The monster wasn't just outside anymore. We were in it. A woman shrieked from the back of the plane. "The floor! Look at the floor!" We all looked down. The carpet was squirming. It rippled and buckled as if giant worms were moving underneath it. A foul, swampy odor filled the air. The fear in the cabin was a living thing now. A wild animal we were all trying to outrun, but there was nowhere to go. We were thousands of feet in the air, locked inside a flying cage that was turning against us. For a moment, everyone just froze, paralyzed by the sheer impossibility of it all. The plane groaned again, a long mournful sound like a dying whale. We had to do something. We couldn't just sit here and wait to be digested. The businessman, a man named Mr. Harrison, stood up, his face grim. "Listen up!" he shouted over the growing chaos. "Panicking won't help. We have to fight back." A flight attendant, whose name tag read Sarah, nodded, her professional calm replaced by steely determination. "He's right. This thing, whatever it is, seems to be part of the plane now. Maybe we can hurt it from the inside." It was a crazy idea. How do you fight an airplane? But it was better than doing nothing. A small group of us gathered in the aisle. Me, Mr. Harrison, Sarah, and a few other brave passengers. We were a strange team. A teenager, a businessman, a flight attendant, and a mechanic who happened to be on his way to a conference. Our plan was simple, and probably stupid. We had to find the heart of the monster. The mechanic, a guy named Gus, suggested the cockpit. "All the plane's controls are there," he reasoned. "Its brain. If we can get in there, maybe we can disrupt whatever is controlling it." But the cockpit door was locked and a strange green goo was now oozing from the seams around it. Sarah grabbed a metal fire extinguisher from the wall. "This will have to do," she yelled. Mr. Harrison found a heavy-duty serving cart from the galley. Together we decided to ram the door. It felt like we were trying to break into the monster's head. The rest of the passengers huddled together, watching us with wide, terrified eyes. As we prepared to charge, the plane fought back. The seat belts in the empty rows suddenly whipped out, trying to wrap around our legs like vinyl tentacles. The overhead lights flickered wildly, trying to blind us. A horrible, gurgling voice echoed through the cabin, seeming to come from the walls themselves. "Get out!" it rasped. We ignored it. "On three!" Mr. Harrison yelled. "1, 2, 3!" We slammed the heavy cart into the cockpit door with all our might. There was a sickening crunch of metal and a high-pitched screech that tore through the air. The green goo splattered everywhere. We had made it angry. We slammed the cart into the door again and again. With a final, groaning tear of metal, the lock broke and the door swung open. The sight inside was worse than I could have imagined. The cockpit was alive. The control panels were covered in the pulsing green slime, and wires snaked from the ceiling like veins. The pilots were slumped in their seats, unconscious, with thin green tendrils wrapped around their arms and necks. In the center of the main dashboard, where the navigation screen should be, was a single giant glowing green eye. It swiveled to look at us, and the horrible gurgling voice filled the small space. "You cannot stop me." It was the plane. The plane was the monster. Gus, the mechanic, didn't hesitate. He pointed to a mess of thick cables running from the eye into the main console. "The power source! If we cut those, we might sever its connection." He pulled a multi-tool from his pocket while Sarah and Mr. Harrison stood guard, ready to fend off any more slithering seatbelts or shadowy attacks. I just stood there, frozen, staring into that giant hateful eye. It felt like it was looking right through me, into my soul. Then, I saw my own reflection in it, and a surge of anger cut through my fear. This thing wasn't going to win. I grabbed the fire extinguisher from Sarah and pointed it directly at the eye. "Now, Gus!" I screamed. As Gus frantically sought at the thick cables, I sprayed the eye with a blast of icy foam. The monster roared, a sound that was half machine and half animal. The entire plane shook violently, throwing us against the walls. The lights went completely black, plunging us into total darkness. All I could hear was Gus grunting, the monster screaming, and my own heart pounding in my ears. Then, with a final snap, the cables were cut. The giant eye flickered and died. The horrible groaning stopped. The emergency lights flickered on, and the steady, familiar hum of the engines returned. A collective sigh of relief swept through the cabin. We had done it. We had actually won. The plane began its descent, and soon we saw the beautiful normal lights of the airport runway below. We landed with a gentle bump, and cheers erupted through the cabin. We had survived. As we walked off the plane and into the bright, sterile terminal, everyone was talking at once, recounting the horror we had just escaped. I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Sarah, the flight attendant. "You were very brave back there, Leo," she said, giving me a weak smile. I smiled back, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. But then I noticed something, a small greenish-yellow smudge on her uniform, right near her collar. And as she smiled, I saw it. For just a split second, her eyes flickered with a faint, sickly green glow. The monster wasn't gone. We had just brought it home.